Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack
and Sean Chapman.
And this week we're having two podcasts.
Yes, so this is just the worst named podcast ever. It's never weekly.
Yeah.
And then we did like this one time where it is kind of weekly. It's now actually bi-weekly. This is nonsense.
Yeah. Well, anyway, a couple days ago we came at you to talk about Godzilla, the 2014 film.
Yes, we did.
So listen to that if you haven't.
Yes.
We talk about Godzilla. This week we're talking about something really cool also.
Yes, but also really niche.
Yes, really niche. So this is why it's a separate podcast.
Yeah.
I can assume that many, if not most of our listeners are interested in or have seen the 2014 Godzilla film because it made $100 million.
Yes.
This week we are talking about a film from Japan that is only available in a sort of special niche package in America.
Yeah.
Based on a game that, you know, we like, but a lot of people
did not sell like crazy numbers.
Yes. So as you know, Sean and mine's favorite game of all time, no contest, is Persona 3.
Yes.
And we love Persona.
Yes.
We also love Persona 4.
We've made enough Persona podcasts.
We have a 2-part Persona 4 podcast. We've got a 1-part Persona 3 podcast. We've talked about Persona in pretty much every other podcast.
Yeah.
We usually use Persona music as our intro music.
Yeah, when there's not a specific topic.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And in any case, Persona 3, also very popular in Japan, of course.
Yeah.
And just as they animated Persona 4 a couple years ago as a TV series, Persona 4 The Animation,
yes,
they have begun animating...
That "the" is very important.
Yes. The Animation, The Golden.
Yeah.
Yes. Japan
the ultimate in my ocarina.
Japan and the definite article, you know, it's a saga.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing saga. So anyway, they're animating Persona 3 as a series of films, which, based on how far this movie got, I'm assuming will be 4 movies.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I could see it being 3. I could also see it being 4.
Yeah, so we'll see. In any case, the first one came out in November of last year on your birthday, Sean.
Yes.
November 23rd. And it just came out on Blu-ray in Japan last week, and this week we're getting a Blu-ray in North America that is pretty much just the Japanese package, but it's got English subtitles and some other goodies for English-speaking people.
Yeah.
And you can
like
buy
ourselves.
it. Yes, you can buy it at RightStuf.com. That's like the Funimation store. There's a lot of anime there. It's a good place for that. And it's there's 2 versions. There's a $60 standard edition, but I would urge you to pay the extra $20 for the $80 collector's edition, because then you get not only the movie, but you get a soundtrack, special packaging, an art book, lobby cards, stickers, sets, all this other stuff.
Just everything. Like he brought his because his came first, and
we'll talk about it in
okay.
In any case, we're going to talk about this whole set. We're also going to review the movie on this week's show. Or today's show. It's not this week's. Yeah. So this is kind of a special show. All we're talking about on this episode is Persona 3 the movie, number 1, Spring of Birth. We will be spoiling things from the rest of Persona 3 because I don't think there's any way not to. Mm-hmm. So we're going to be talking about Persona 3, the game, and specifically this movie, this 100-minute movie. But if you haven't seen the movie, you probably could listen to this if you know the story of Persona. We can tell you about the movie and what it does. Obviously, we can't really spoil anything. You know the story if you've played Persona.
And for anyone just listening to this casually, like, this movie is not for like just random people to pick up. Like, this is definitely it's a good adaptation of the game, but like if you had not played the game, I think a lot of this movie would be kind of really confusing.
Well, I wanted to talk about that later, definitely as kind of a subtopic when we get into things. How would this potentially work for people who have not played the game?
But that's why I just want to say this: if you're someone who is just randomly listening to this, like. Because I don't know if it won't make any sense. So.
Yeah, the Godzilla episode was for everyone.
Yeah,
this episode is for Persona fans.
Yeah.
You can come back next week. We're going to be talking about X-Men. We're going to be talking about Watch Dogs. Lots of cool stuff. And other news and things. But today is talking about Persona. So, Sean, let's break down what you get with this $80 collector's set.
Okay.
So, it comes in this big, plastic slipcase, obviously, because that's what Japanese Blu-rays come in.
Yes.
And then within that, you've got the main box, which we'll talk about in a second. There's 2 inserts outside of that. There is the sticker set, where you got like 20 Persona 3 stickers, and it comes in this surprisingly like elaborate package.
Yeah.
Where you've got this like cardboard slipcase for it, and you open that up, and then the stickers are like held in place by 4 tabs.
Yeah, where usually like stickers are just kind of like thrown into packaging.
Yeah, it's a whole. The stickers are an event here. You know, that's why I don't really care about stickers. They made me care about the stickers because they make them cool. Let's see. You also have an English translation booklet, which will become more important later on.
Yeah.
But yes, it's all basically there's an art booklet with the main set, and this just translates all the Japanese from it. So rather than redoing the entire art book, they just gave you the translations, which is fair enough. That would be a lot of work. So anyway, and then the main thing that you get is just you got a cardboard slipcase, which is really sturdy and nice. It's got that great cover art of Makoto Yuki, the protagonist of this movie. Looks like he just shot himself.
She does a lot in the game and in the movie. Although he does it a lot more in the game.
And of course, you get the amazing title for this film, Persona 3 the movie, #1, Spring of Birth.
I like there's no like colon between Persona 3 and the movie. It's just Persona 3 the movie. Then the subtitle is, and the subtitle is #1 Spring of Birth. Yeah. There's no colons anywhere in that title.
Yep. And on the back, you've got the entire time never waits. It delivers all equally the same end thing. Yeah. So it's Memento Mori is written all over this package. I like that. All right. So within the cardboard slipcase, which really is, I want to say, praise this. It's really sturdy. Nice. Yeah. I like that. All right. You've got the art book, which is more than an art book. I'm calling it an art book because it's got a lot of cool art from the movie. It's also got preview of movie 2. Yep. So we see Strega there. I'm excited for that. Takaya. Yeah, we see some Aigis. Then it's got a whole thing about the soundtrack CD that comes with this. It's got notes from Shoji Meguro, the composer, and everything. It's got cast interviews with the directors. It's got storyboard stuff. It's pretty cool. So and obviously the art in this movie is so incredible. It's nice to have this supplement to it. Got all the character designs. So that's nice. In any case, so that's what that is. You use the English translation book in conjunction with that, I guess. I like that Makoto at no point in this movie uses his right eye. His hair is always covering it. All right.
Well, that's the thing that you don't know is that, unlike Ken Watanabe in Godzilla, Makoto Yuki totally has an eye patch. You just can't see it.
Exactly. So at some point in his life, he lost an eye. Maybe that whole thing with eye, you learn about. Yeah. He lost an eye. All right. Then you've got this set of, I think they're lobby cards. I actually haven't opened this yet. So let's see. I don't know. You've got the
Jonathan has just been defeated by plastic packaging.
Well, it kind of tore when I was trying to open it here. So anyway, but I love you were commenting earlier on the image here. If you didn't know anything about Persona,
yeah, it's just an image of Makoto putting that's the like official name for the main character, and he's just putting the evoker, the gun, to his head, and so it's always a weird part about Persona 3 is that it's filled with this really sort of startling imagery of teenagers putting guns to their heads. And if you didn't know that they were doing that to summon like monsters to help them fight, you'd be very shocked, I think.
All right, so yes, you've got this. It's all the posters for the movie. So you've got this.
You've got a lot of. So it's basically they give you a bunch of really tiny posters.
Yeah. So you've got that one. You've got this one, which is of Makoto during the Dark Hour fighting. Then you've got my favorite of the movie's posters, which is inspired by the original.
The Burn My Dread opening from the game.
I love that. I've had that as my phone background even. So, and then you've got this last one, which is another one fighting during the Dark Hour. I like all these posters, and this is a common thing with Japanese Blu-rays. The Blu-ray for Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods came with lobby card posters for every one of the Dragon Ball Z movies ever, which is cool because I like those are all really nice posters.
That would be a lot.
There were about 18. Yeah. So anyway, that's cool. You get all those little mini posters, which is nice. The package would be significantly bigger if they gave you full-size posters, I suppose.
Yes, it would be a very large package then.
Yes, all right, I'm going to focus on putting this away later. Then, let's see, you got the main thing, which is the disc case. Got some really good art here again of more shooting yourself in the head. Yeah. Summoning Orpheus, who Makoto in the movie keeps much longer than I did in the game.
I think he used him in 2 fights.
Yeah. All right, so then you open it up, and you've got the Blu-ray disc on one side, and you've got the soundtrack CD on the other side. Very nice, both of them. Soundtrack CD, it's about 30 minutes long. If you don't know about the Persona soundtracks, how they do it is they never repeat music across soundtracks. Yeah. So this is just the original music for the movie. The movie uses a lot of music from the game, but they assume you have the game soundtrack, so you can just kind of combine them at that point. But yeah, it's a good CD. I've listened to it. Yes. All right, and then what's on the Blu-ray disc? You've got and I forgot to mention, when you open up the actual disc holder, you get a bunch of fucking ads stuck in there.
Yeah, this was when he was opening it up, everything just
fell out. Yes, including this ad for Persona 3, the live, stage show, where it's got real people dressed up as the characters in the game, and it's kind of creepy.
Yeah, if you've ever seen any sort of, really hardcore anime cosplay, you know what that looks like, and it doesn't look good. It's just unsettling seeing people try to, their hair is super, it just looks like their hair is made of hair gel at that point, because it's, so stiff to try to get it into the shape, the very specific shape that animated character's hair has to be in.
So this is specifically an ad for a DVD of the Persona 3 stage show, The Weird Masquerade, and it's 2 discs, apparently. So you got a lot of
a stage show.
Yes. I don't know. I'm curious about this, but I think it would give me nightmares.
It's too scary. That's too much.
Yes. All right. The cool thing about anime characters is that they don't look like real people.
Exactly. So, making them look like real people it's scary. It's a scary thing that people do.
All right. The Blu-ray disc itself, it's got the director's cut, which is just defaults to and plays. That's about 98 minutes long. The original theatrical cut is also on the disc. It's 91 minutes. It's got stereo and 5.1 lossless mixes, as all Japanese Blu-rays pretty much do. So that's nice. And then it's got a bunch of trailers and TV spots and stuff. So pretty good package. You were commenting earlier on, this is a really nice release for a movie that just came out.
Yeah. That the standard in America is usually, unless it's something really crazy and you're getting the super collector's edition, you'd never see something that is this sort of robust with all this kind of stuff in it. But this is just kind of a standard thing for anime. This is the thing you'd see for the 5th super release of Jurassic Park or something. And
but totally standard for anime. I mean, you've seen my Dragon Ball Z Battle of Gods set. It's insane. But yeah, so it's $80, but you get, I don't know if you get your money's worth, but you get a lot of stuff for it.
Yeah. So it's not just you're paying $80 for a standard DVD that you would think of for an American DVD. You're paying a premium, but it is a premium product. The difference is there is no non-premium product when you're buying anime DVDs, basically.
Yeah, well, there is the $60 version of this, which I think is just the Blu-ray disc in a case.
Sure. But even that's more fancy than what ours are.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. Yep. Yeah, if you usually just a normal standard movie in Japan on Blu-ray, that'll cost you about $30-$40.
Yeah.
And even then, that's what our list price for Blu-rays is here, so that's not hugely extravagant. But anyway, let's talk about the movie itself, Sean. My comment, and I thought this it impressed me right from the go. I enjoyed this significantly more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
I was actually, as excited as I am about Persona, and I always talk about how much I love Persona, I was kind of worried about this movie. I wasn't sure I would like it. There's a couple things working against it for me, which is that I've never seen Persona 4, the animation.
Yeah.
So I don't know how these games translate to, non-game mediums.
Yeah.
But that kind of just worries me because they're so different as storytelling mediums.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you do it. And then Persona 3... There's a couple things working against it as a movie series, in that, we've had a lot of these multi-part movie series lately in America, and it's always frustrating because they don't really feel like standalone movies,
For example, Amazing Spider-Man 2 just feels like it is there to make Sinister Six a possibility.
Sure, I was even meaning something like, the Harry Potter Deathly Hallows 2-parter.
That's a better example of where it's just literally the first movie just stops, and then you're like...
Or Hobbit, Desolation of Smaug just gets to a point and cuts off,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And the problem is, where I assumed this movie would go up to, which is Fuka, which is where it does go up to, is that's the point. Right after that is when the story of Persona 3 in the game gets good.
Yeah.
Those first 12 hours of Persona 3 are super fun, but narratively it's fairly sparse up to that point.
Yeah, it's just all kind of slowly setting stuff up, and it's more there to get you ready and ease you into the mechanics of the social links and Tartarus and all that stuff.
And more than anything else, I was just worried about how would the characters translate into a 90-minute movie when you otherwise have 80 hours to spend with them. Mm-hmm. How would the battles? How would they do that in the movie? How would they handle Tartarus? Any of this. And pretty much every single worry I possibly had about this, they didn't just overcome. I thought they did a spectacular job.
Yeah, I definitely really agree. And for me, I have seen Persona 4 the animation, so I understand. So it's for the fight scenes, I wasn't worried about that because they're basically, other than they do have, I actually kind of like this more, that they do have the Persona 3 people using their weapons and fighting themselves, whereas in Persona 4 the animation that doesn't happen. So that makes more sense because in Persona 4 they are not this squad of people, they're just kind of these people. So yeah, so that I wasn't sort of concerned about how they were going to handle the action scenes because I've seen how they've done that before. The thing I was most curious about, and it's the thing that this movie does the best, and it's what allows it to be its own movie, is I was worried about how they're going to handle the main character, because they do such... That's the thing that in Persona 4 the animation they do such a great job with, is they infuse the Narukami character with a lot of life, and they make him very interesting, but it still feels like it comes naturally from the game. That is like this person embellishing what is from the game, even though that's very sparse, and making a character out of it, and it's a lot of fun. But Narukami, and now I'm going to have to get used to calling him Makoto, like, they are very, very different characters, because, like, they're both, in the games, they're both, like, player ciphers, but I feel like Makoto is even more of a player cipher. Like, he has even less sort of, like, personality than Narukami does. But they use that and come up with a really, really good character arc for him, and that's what pins the movie. That's what, like, makes the movie work, is that they come up with a unique character arc that still feels natural from the game. That is, if, like, I were to make a character for Makoto, this is exactly what I would have done. Like, this is exactly, like, perfect. And then they use that to inform, like, the entire pace of this movie, and I think that was brilliant.
I agree so much. I mean, it's a good starting point to talk about the movie, is that, you know, I think it's not just that it feels like it stems organically from the game, it's that his characterization feels like it comes from a very deep understanding of the core themes of the game.
Yeah, because it's also something that you can see how they're going to develop him in the future movies, knowing how the plot of the game goes.
Yeah, so, I mean, again, last spoiler warning, Persona 3 ends with the main character dying.
Yeah.
And it ends with him dying, sacrificing himself for his friends.
Yeah. In, like, the saddest fucking way you possibly can, because he doesn't just die. It's like he slowly wastes away.
Yes, it's a bummer. I have talked about this. I openly weeped for about 10 minutes at the end of Persona 3.
It's a sad fucking game.
Yes, very sad. So how do you build to that? And I think what's so smart about this is that, and I think they pushed this to a fairly extreme place, which I liked.
Yeah.
They went all in on it, which is that Makoto in this movie is like mentally disturbed.
Yeah, he is completely broken.
Yeah.
He has effectively no personality. He has no will of his own. He's just alive, and that's kind of it.
Yeah, and you really start to see where this is coming. For the first, like, 20 minutes of the movie, it's mostly just he's not reacting to things, and you're wondering where they're going to go with it.
Yeah, and it's good that they really slowly build it up for you to sort of realize what they're doing with the character, because the opening of the movie is almost exactly like the game, other than, like, the dude who kills himself with the train. That doesn't happen. But it's like slowly him walking through the city and stuff, and him not reacting. I was really curious how they were going to do that, because that's kind of a very strange moment in the game.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, where there's no explanation for why he's so unfazed by everything, other than that he's just kind of the main player character. You know, this is like, whatever, this is just kind of how it is. And it feels very video gamey. And at first I thought it was a really strange choice that they didn't change that. That I thought, like, he was going to be, when, like, he sees the Dark Hour, that he was going to be really surprised and everything. And it's like, no, they keep that opening exactly the same, and then they slowly explain through his character for the rest of the movie why he is like that, and they use those moments to sort of inform his whole character.
Well, here's the specific moment I was thinking of, is when the shadow attacks the dorm at night, the first time on the first full moon. It's the big sort of first big scene of the movie. Yeah. You know, Yukari is running Makoto upstairs. If you've played the game, you really know this moment, and then they subvert it. Where
this is like, it's the first moment that they kind of have a unique scene. Right here.
And so they subvert it in that as they're running up, Makoto stops to look at the moon, and Yukari is wondering, well, why aren't you coming? Why aren't you coming up with me? And he just says, I don't care. I don't care about dying. Why do you care about living? And that's when you realize nothing matters to him at all.
It's a line. It's something that, like, we're both taking Japanese, so we, like, know a little bit about Japanese. But the line he specifically says, she's like, you know, do you want to die? And she says, "Do de moi," which is like, it doesn't matter. Like, either ways. And it's something that's like, I wish the subtitles had done a little bit better job, because that line repeats and is modified through a bunch of different characters throughout the movie. It's just like, whichever is fine. Like,
that's one thing to note really quickly, is that having a basic knowledge of Japanese will help you with this, because the subtitles are good enough,
but they make some very odd choices.
Yeah,
that it's like, and they're fine subtitles, but it's like there are a couple of where there are some of the writing is really, really sort of interconnected in a way that they don't capture with the subtitles. It's like, I wish obviously that's like a really hard thing to do, but I wish they could have found a way to do that.
There's just a lot of nuances to the language here that if you pick up on them just without the subtitles, they help you out. Yeah. So in any case, but that moment, and where they're pulling this from is that it seems the implication over the movie, they don't hit you over the head with this, but it's the implication is that you know the main character of Persona 3 lost his parents. He's an orphan.
Yeah, and they they have some flashbacks that allude to that in this movie, because that's information that... Actually, no, they kind of tell you that early on, don't they?
You know it immediately, but the circumstances...
Yeah, but they don't like... They kind of just say it, right?
Yeah.
And they don't, like... There's nothing sort of dramatic about it, where they have, like, these very sort of traumatic flashbacks in the film.
Yeah. So you know he's lost his parents, and I think the other implication is he's probably been kicked around so much since then.
Yeah, that he's just been moving around, and he has no sort of anchor or anything.
Yeah, and
he has no friends.
Yeah, and so you can understand how he would get to this point, but he's at a point where he is disturbed is not too heavy a word to use.
It's creepy. Yeah. It's just like he really is so... And it's something that it's also... Like, they don't show it a lot, but there's in the game, you have the apathy syndrome thing. It's like, it feels... It's kind of just... it's sort of dramatically ironic that he's like saving people by fighting the shadows from apathy syndrome, but like he's actually like purely apathetic. Like he is like the epitome of apathy beyond even like the people just like doing nothing who suffer from apathy syndrome.
Exactly. So over the course of the movie, we get into exploring Tartarus, fighting shadows, all of that, and he only does anything because people tell him to, and he has nothing else better to do. Yeah, and he just
doesn't really give a fuck. It's like he can fight, so people are telling him to fight, so he's like, why not, basically.
Yeah. It's really interesting on that level. And the overall arc of the movie, and I'm actually glad they didn't play their hand too heavy on this and have all his development happen right here.
Yeah, that it's like they develop him, but it's only a little bit. Like there's still a lot of room for him to grow to be who he needs to be at the end of the story. So
the whole arc is that this goes up to, when I say goes up to Fuka, that means the full moon event where you save Fuka and she joins your team. And what that is basically his arc over the movie is getting to that point, and his friends are in danger, and him making the choice to protect these people and be there for them. Yeah. And that doesn't mean he's suddenly embraced them all as his, best friends in the world, but he's recognized they are important to him, and that is the first step out of apathy.
Yeah, like it's literally like all it is that he's just like, he just doesn't want them to die. Like that's really is. So I really like that it isn't like at the end he doesn't have like some sort of like emotional revelation or anything. It's just like, I don't want these people to die, and that's it. It's not this like, oh, I love you, Kari, and Junpei's like my best bud, and like I need to save them. It's like, I just don't want them to die.
Yeah, and I think those baby steps are really nice, and I think the title of this movie, number 1, Spring of Birth. Yeah, Spring of Birth makes sense. It is not his awakening. It's birth. It's just the first moment,
the beginning.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. And I think I can see where they're going with this over the course of the movies, which is that one of the specific changes they make in this movie that's interesting from the game is that on that operation where they save Fuka, in the game, obviously, you're Makoto, you go through the whole thing, you're there for everything. In this, Yukari gets really angry at him for not caring about anything, as she should.
Yeah, and which also gives her a really good character arc. Because it's like the characters, the only person that in this section of the game has a character arc is Junpei. Like, because he has the whole thing of like where he wants to be team leader, and he's really frustrated that people keep on like kind of putting him down, and nobody else has much of a character arc that takes place over the game. So it's very good that they give Yukari one as well. Yeah, so she's mad, and Makoto just decides to stay back at the dorm. Yeah. And in that conversation where she's, yelling at him, she basically says something to the effect of, I don't, want you fighting for us if you don't care about she's saying, if you don't care about anything, your own safety is, you're going to get yourself killed. It's just like, if you're only fighting because someone told you to, like, you shouldn't be here. So the whole implication is that obviously, because it's like all like literally 99% of his lines are him just saying, "I understand." Like that's what. Yeah, I'll do it. Basically. Yeah. Wakata. But anyway, and so the whole implication of that scene is that she's telling him, you're going to get yourself killed by not caring, and the great irony of this series is going to be his death is going to happen because he cares so much. Yeah. And I like that that's where we're headed. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because my biggest question going into this series is that why Persona 3 hits you as hard as it does, at least in my reading of the game and my experience with it, is that you are the character, and you create these relationships, and you live this life over a year, and it simulates death for you, and it's about feeling kind of and coming to terms with what death is, but you can't do that in a movie. That's not something that a movie can tackle, and so I think they're choosing how they've kind of positioned themselves to do that kind of arc over these next movies is really smart and interesting, and it's something I honestly thought they'd be able to pull off. It's interesting to me. Yeah, but I want to talk about the other characters. So you noted, Yukari has a nice arc in that way, and Junpei kind of has a built-in arc. They've escalated that a little bit. His whole thing where he's really resentful. I'm playing the game right now. It actually happens a little after Fuka's stuff, but it makes sense to move it up here.
or at least the first part of it. So he's kind of got a pre-built arc. Some of the other characters are in this, they're more minor. Like, I don't feel we have much of a feeling for who Mitsuru is so far.
Yeah, because her stuff doesn't really come up until the Kirijo's corporation shit starts happening.
But overall, this is something I was really impressed by. In these, 100 minutes we have for this one movie, I think virtually every character of import pops in this film. Yeah. You understand why they're fun. You get invested in them. I think even if you were coming into this absolutely cold, there's a lot that would confuse you. I think you would still understand why Junpei is an interesting character, why Yukari is an interesting character, where Akihiko is coming from. You would be interested in those things, and that's really super impressive to me.
Yeah.
Because this was my first time hearing any of the voice cast in Japanese. I've only played the game, which is dubbed into English. So I don't have any pre-built affection for these voices. So I felt like the movie kind of had to make me care about them, and it did, and that was really impressive to me.
Yeah. Like, I've heard most of them through, like, watching some YouTube videos just out of curiosity, and then I played, like, probably, like, half of Persona 4 Arena, where I, like, kind of switched between the language tracks a lot, just out of curiosity. So I've heard, like, most of the main casts. Voices, but
Yeah.
They are all very good.
They're very good. I don't... It's funny. It's hard to say. You can't really compare them because I've spent so much time with the English voices. There are some English voices I do find inherently a little more interesting. Like, I think Yukari's voice in Japanese is fairly generic, whereas...
Michelle Ruff, who does her voice in English, she's always very good.
And one of the things I love about Yukari in the English dub of the game is that she just sounds like and is written like no other character I've ever seen.
Yeah.
She's very unique.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. I like her voice more in English.
But it's still, I mean, the uniqueness of the character still shines through here, and a lot of the voice work is good. I mean, even with, a small part, a very small number of lines, the actor who voices Makoto says something about that character.
Yeah, he does a very good job.
Yeah, and he also voices Pharos, so those scenes are fun. The mysterious boy. I like Pharos' voice in Japanese more. I'll go on.
That's definitely true.
So yes. And one of the characters I wanted to say that I thought they did a better job here than they did in the game is Fuka.
Yeah, I definitely agree. They like the whole Fuka arc. While like I thought it was fun in the game, and I thought it was an interesting idea with like the person being trapped in the school when Tartarus happens.
It comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's not particularly well set up. So it's like they have a bunch of scenes like establishing Fuka and Natsuki's relationship and like that sort of like their weird friendship beforehand, and also using that opportunity to develop Makoto a little bit. Yeah, so they set it up a lot better and sort of give you some insight into what kind of person Fuka is, and that's like in the game she just kind of pops up and she's just this very helpful woman who's not particularly well voice acted, who tells you people's weaknesses.
There are two enemies.
Yeah, exactly. You can do this.
And I love Fuka as a character. I really like her in the game. But I thought, that whole arc, when you play the game, it's just one day you start hearing about the ghost story, and you're like, what ghost story? It never fully gels in the game in a fully like coherent way. In this movie, they start seeding it right from the beginning, and I think one of the smartest choices is that they make Fuka kind of a mirror for Makoto, where she is very damaged too. Like, they go more in depth with the idea of bullying and what it does to a person, and Fuka is broken similarly. She is... The way she looks at Natsuki is a very emotionally damaged way of looking at someone. It's like this Stockholm Syndrome kind of thing almost. And I think that makes an interesting arc. And so you've got a lot of, when you get to the climax, a lot of moments of identification between Makoto and her. And she is honestly, even though he doesn't know her, she's a focal point for him choosing to come into action again. Yeah. And I think that's really cool. So a lot of stuff like that. They're really smart moments.
Yeah, it's interesting because it is like, a lot of it, obviously they cut out like the social link stuff. But a lot of it like feels like a very, very direct, faithful adaptation of what happens in the game. Like down to like, they fight the same fucking bosses, and like the bosses have the same like weird power where they switch weaknesses and stuff. Which obviously is a good opportunity to like highlight what Fuka's ability is. But I still thought it was like, wow, like they're getting like really specific. Yeah. But the changes that they do make are really critically important and like really sort of like snap everything together.
Well, and I wanted to talk about it as an adaptation because here's probably what my biggest worry was. And this is something I've talked about with adaptation before that I know a lot of people disagree with, but I kind of have no place in my life or interest for really strict adaptations of things. They just bore me to tears. If I'm going to watch an adaptation of some story into another medium, I want them to do something with it beyond just telling me the story I've already seen. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that. If they want to go see The Hunger Games, if they change anything at all, it's, they're the people who made the movie are Hitler or something. I just disagree with that. And one of the things that bores me more than anything is sometimes when you see a video game or comics adaptation into animation and they just kind of go through the motions, especially when you're taking 12 hours of game, which is what this stretch of the movie is, and putting it into 98 minutes. This could so easily feel like just a series of basic recap scenes.
Yeah, it's just one scene to the next scene, and it's just like, these are the things that happen in the game, so we're just going to do them.
Yeah, and this movie felt like that. Absolutely not. It just doesn't. Yeah. It feels like its own movie, its own thing. It's very close to the game, but there was no moment where I was watching the movie and feeling like, because I've seen this scene in another medium, I'm bored with it now. And that was really surprising for me. And I don't even know if I can put my finger on what this movie does well to correct that problem, but I think it's got its own energy. It's got its own momentum, because
so much of it is the Makoto being his own character, which makes it also like new, because you don't know how they're going to handle that. And since he is the focal point of this film, like, even scenes you've seen now are recontextualized because you're curious about, like, how is Makoto, like, going to react to this scene? Like, how are they going to use it to inform his character?
And I also think you're completely right on that, and I agree. And I think there's also something to be said for the pace of this movie, which is that it's not just they're fast-forwarding through scenes as fast as they can get through them. Any scene they choose to dramatize here, they've let it breathe.
Yeah.
It doesn't just, they come in, they say the lines, they get out. Each scene kind of, it has the sort of structure to play out, go in full. Each scene tells you something about the characters that are in it. It feels like a very thoughtful adaptation on that level. Like, I think one movie that always has this, the problem I'm describing, if you want an example, is like, one movie that feels like this to me in parts is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. That's the first Harry Potter movie they had to make out of one of those super long Harry Potter books. And of course, and that movie, they tried to cram in every scene from that book, and so it's just, the whole movie plays like the book on fast forward, and it's kind of awkward in that way. And this movie is cramming in even more story, but it doesn't have that fast forward feel to me.
Yeah.
So that's really impressive. But the most impressive thing about this movie, by far to me, is the animation.
Yeah.
It's fucking incredible. I mean, it starts up and your jaw just drops. I think I said at one point to you, this movie looks like it cost a lot of money.
Yeah, it's definitely, it is really, really well animated. And it's not just that, like it's well animated, but it's also the direction is really, really great. Like, there's, like, the way they choose to, like, I just have to use film vocabulary. It's just, like, the way they choose to shoot scenes, and, like, frame scenes is really, really, really dynamic and really interesting.
Well, and one of our favorite parts of the game is the animated cutscenes, right?
Yeah.
And they have this, the animated cutscenes in Persona 3 just have this great atmosphere to them, and they're totally different than anything else in the game. They choose such interesting angles.
Yeah.
They're just dripping atmosphere. And this movie, I think they made a really smart choice. It plays like the movie version of those cutscenes.
Yeah, it's in the same style with, like, weird angles and weird, like, perspectives. Like, there's the one camera angle that I think is both of our favorites, where they're in the Velvet Room, and it's just, like, right under Igor's eyeball, kind of looking up, and Elizabeth is in the background. It's just, like, it's a really weird shot, but it, like, gets across something about, like, the strangeness of this scenario, this very bizarre camera angle.
Yes, and the way they use color, there's no just, like, solid colors in the movie. They're all blending together, and the dark hour scenes,
especially when it turns into the dark hour and the colors just sort of shift into that weird, like, sort of ghostly pallor that they have.
It looks like the backgrounds and stuff in the dark hour look like a Studio Ghibli horror movie, because it looks like the same kind of Ghibli watercolor style, but with, blood and green and this bright, like, yellow moon and
sickly colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
But every scene, everything is just dripping either atmosphere or tone or something in the visuals. And the quality of the animation itself is top-notch, absolutely every scene. But then, you're right, it's just the direction of things. I think the lighting of the movie is really interesting, where they choose to put light sources in. And then I think more than anything else, the framing and the angles. There's a lot of low-angle shots. There's a lot of canted angles. There's a lot of times where it's very rare that you're just seeing the action head-on in a traditional, two-shot or something. Yeah. It's often you're below, you're above, you're to the side in really evocative ways. And it kind of shows sort of psychologically how everything in the movie is kind of, it's not at rest. It's all fluid and kind of violent, and that's really interesting. And I think the way they animate all the fight scenes, too, it's really creative. And this is new for me because I haven't seen the Persona 4 animation, but it's funny how much it pertains to some of the particulars of the turn-based style from the game without feeling awkward and turn-based.
Yeah, that it feels like they didn't just say, like, fuck it, we're not going to try to make the fighting, like, relate to how it is in the game. They really do feel like it's like, this comes from... It feels like a dramatization of a turn-based battle in a weird way, you know?
Yeah,
with, like, all the summoning of the personas and stuff.
But it also looks like it could be its own thing in this movie universe.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big questions when you're watching this is this its own thing in its own movie universe? And I think for the most part, yes, here. Mm-hmm. Because those fights, it makes sense that this is how they fight when you're not, you don't have your battle wheel and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and there's some great scenes. I mean, the entire climax is spectacular, but I think the entire, montage where they're fighting in Tartarus.
Yeah, the first scene where they're fighting in Tartarus and Makoto, like, kicks fucking ass, like that scene.
Yeah.
It's just, like, it's a good scene to display why he is really good at what he does, because it's like, he doesn't give a fuck, so he's just going to go, like, 110%, because why not? And it just shows, like, I don't know, yeah, they're very well done action scenes.
So, on that topic of how does this work as a movie, what are things that are in here that you feel like don't feel fully explained in a movie? Because one of those is like Tartarus, like what are they doing there every night? We don't.
There's a lot of the mythology elements just feel like they're really sort of glossed over, and that's kind of like in the game. It feels a little bit like that too, but I think it's the fact that it's a game makes it a lot easier to accept. But a lot of like they move through the exposition so fast about like, what is the Dark Hour, and like what are shadows? Why are we doing this? That kind of stuff. Like they do explain a lot of it, but it's like in one line, whereas they take like a whole scene to do it in the game.
Right.
Like evokers, they never really try to explain anything about the evoker.
They don't do that in the game. Yeah,
in the game they don't really do it either. But I feel like they do it a little bit. Like there's I'm not even sure if there's a line in the movie that's like, yeah, no, you shoot. If you pull the trigger, it summons your persona. Like they just kind of do it.
Although I will say one thing thematically that I thought worked here is that, and if you play the entire Persona 3, you get to the end, you reflect on the themes, you'll get what the evokers are about.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get that for a while in Persona 3. I think in this movie, because of the themes of death with Makoto, I think you get earlier on what that symbolism is there for.
Yeah, and it's especially the fact that they imbue his character with the fact that he doesn't really give a fuck. And it contrasts really well with Yukari in that scene where Yukari fails to summon her persona, and so then Makoto has to do it. That is like, it is exactly his apathy and his like willingness to die because he doesn't really care allows him to summon his persona in a way that like Yukari's too afraid to be able to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I do wonder, like, and they don't even really specify this, but are they in this movie? Are they going into Tartarus every night? Is it just something they go to a couple times? They're curious about. Mm-hmm. We don't really know, and I understand that's something if you're going to tell this story, you kind of have to cut that down.
Yeah, they don't put in like really any social link stuff. Like there are like characters from the social links make like background cameos,
and I think they're clever cameos. Like they use. The student council leader guy, what's his name? Hidetoshi. Yeah. They use him in a really clever way.
To deliver like a little piece of exposition. Yeah, they use him well.
But in a way that also, if you know the game, he's the one who would be saying
it's a nice reference that like a nice reference that you get, and like they have the old couple in the bookstore and stuff.
Yeah,
but I'm curious because obviously with Persona 4 the animation, since it was a 24 episode series, they were able to adapt most of the social links in some form. Like obviously was not the exact way it's presented in the game, but like those characters and their basic stories made it into most of the series. So I'm curious if in the movie, Persona 3 doesn't need it as much as Persona 4, so I don't think they need to try to like put any of those stories in. But I'm curious to see if in the successive movies, if they're going to try to work in one of those as like a subplot. Like obviously, I think the easiest one to do would be the dying man social link. You could probably work that in some way as a subplot.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. I mean, you could even just pick one of the movies to do that in, and it could be kind of this thematic touchstone you keep going back to over that movie, and you get to the end and whatever. All the rest of these movies are going to have very dark endings, and that would help underline it.
Yeah. So I'm curious to see how they approach the social link stuff, because obviously, like, I'm not criticizing them for not putting in the social link stuff into this movie. I think that was obviously the right choice. Like, it would have been crazy to try to stuff one of those in there.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, back to the discussion we were having about the game elements, I think most of them are actually pretty impressively contextualized for the film. Like, I was talking about Tartarus, but I actually think for the most part, like, it made more sense than I thought it would for them to be going into Tartarus in this movie. But, like, the only one that I just... why is the Velvet Room in this movie beyond that it was in the game?
Right, yeah. I knew there was something that was like one weird thing I was going to say. There's a weird thing about the movie that I was going to bring up, and that was it.
They are well done scenes. They're well acted. They have great style to them. But I mean, what do they add?
Yeah, they're like, hopefully they build on it. Like, I'm curious if they're going to make Elizabeth a character like she is in Fest, like she kind of does some stuff. But yeah, like it is because the way they handled it in Persona 4 the animation is that stuff was almost completely out of like the episode proper. Like, it was all, like, basically the cold opening of each episode would start with Margaret and Igor in the Velvet Room talking to the camera as if you were the main character, and like that's how they would set up stories that way and that kind of stuff. So, like, I don't know how you incorporate the Velvet Room and make it make sense, but it definitely doesn't. It has no real place other than that it's in the game. Like, you don't need to have it there. No,
you don't need to. I think maybe what they're thinking is that when they get to the end of this whole thing, Igor plays some importance in the climax.
Yeah, and like dramatizing those scenes in the Velvet Room. I think they make a weird choice by having Makoto not, because the Persona 4 the animation does the same thing where you don't feel entirely clear if the main character is aware of that, of like being in the Velvet Room, like if they even know it, because they don't make the main character makes no reference to it, they never talk about it, they don't reflect on it, and you don't even see them because it's almost entirely a point of view shot. Other than this one, they have the weird camera angle that we talked about. So it's like, I think it would make a lot more sense if you showed Makoto in the Velvet Room and had him actually like have a conversation with Elizabeth or Igor, like just a little bit of one. Because I can see at the end it would be useful to have their characters there to be able to dramatize what Makoto's like, his thought process with like sacrificing himself and everything.
I agree, and I think they are obviously hampered by the fact that Igor's voice actor has passed away.
Yeah, and I'm almost positive it's the same voice, so like
it is. I read about this. They're just sourcing from the game, so they can't have Makoto interacting with a dead voice. I mean,
Igor, but they could do it with Elizabeth.
They could, and it's weird. And the thing is, as you say, it's very clear in this movie that Makoto is going to the Velvet Room. You just don't.
Yeah, but it's like the movie like never like he never tips his hand about it. So it's like you don't like you could do a reading of the movie and say that like if you didn't know anything about the game, I could see that you would be super fucking confused because it's like it never fully contextualizes it. The only time is when he's passed out or whatever. They say is like, you've been spending time in the Velvet Room. It's like, but even that you could like miss that line. That it's like, it doesn't feel like he is anchored in any way. That it's like you're fully aware that he's a character that is existing in the Velvet Room, and that he's aware once he's out of the Velvet Room that he had those experiences.
Yeah, I think, obviously for Persona 5, if they have a Velvet Room in there, they're going to have to get over it and recast Igor.
Yeah.
And it may have been beneficial to do that here and build some actual scenes with it. Or at least with, as you say, with Elizabeth, because she's a really great character.
Yeah, she's really funny.
If you've played Fest, I love Elizabeth, and she would be interesting to explore here. And those are pretty minor scenes in the course of things.
Yeah, there's like 2 or 3 of them.
Yeah.
And so they do feel like they mostly just exist because they exist in the game and they couldn't figure out a way to rework them in any way.
How do you feel about having the calendar progression?
I'm fine with it. Like, it's something, again, because you made the comment, like, you kind of, like, gasped almost, like, a little bit when you're watching the movie and it happened for the first time.
Yes.
Whereas for me, that's how they do it in Persona 4 the animation, so it didn't surprise me. But,
and I wanted to say, I was surprised because I just would never have expected that to go into a movie, because it's just such a gamey thing,
Yeah.
But so I did gasp when it happened, but then the more the movie went on, I actually felt like it was good to have there because
the story takes place over such a tremendous quantity of time
that
without it, I don't know how you would convey that, especially because it's like you need the full moons are so important that it's like that also gives you like this weird bit of foreshadowing when like the calendar is scrolling past and then you see it lands on a full moon, then you kind of it's like, oh, this is.
And so you and I can make jokes about how we spent that whole week social linking, or it went over a Sunday. I was playing the MMORPG or something. Yeah. But I think if you were watching this hypothetically cold or something, what you would get out of that is just, again, progression of time. And I think it works. It's nice because whether you're playing the game or watching the movie or whatever, the story does depend so much on time and the flow of time that having that calendar and that rhythm to it does help the movie.
Yeah.
And by the end, it was not bothering me. And even the first time it didn't bother me. I was just like, that's a surprise for me. Yeah. So, yes, I want to talk a little bit about, there's a lot of great Easter eggs here just for fans of the game.
Yeah.
And little things. And what impressed me is that none of the like cameos or Easter eggs or anything like that, I think, take away from the movie. It's not like the movie stops.
Yeah, it's like if you didn't know, like if you didn't know about the game and you saw like one of the ones is, I forget the character's name, but it's like the fat kid Social Link.
Yeah.
He's just in the background of one shot when the character's in the restaurant just eating food.
Yeah.
If you didn't know anything about the game, you just think it's a background character. There's no like emphasis put on him. But if you know the game, it's a fun little like, oh hey, it's that dude.
Yeah, and in one that might confuse you a little more if you were going in cold, but like the first persona that Makoto summons outside of Orpheus is Jack Frost. And
which is the Atlas like logo and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you and I were both very excited by that.
Yeah. Ho ho ho, motherfucker.
Yes, it was awesome. So there's just little things like that they did, and I think some of the moves that they have the characters do, it's fully contextualized within the film, but it's also just so satisfying as a fan of the game, and that's nowhere more apparent than with the music in the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they know when to deploy game music for maximum awesomeness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like all the... So it's like, they have the deep breath song in the train section, which is when that song plays in the game. So it's like, it does, like, sort of... It just makes it feel very familiar in a great way when, like, those songs that you know really well, or, like, the test montage, the test song, the midterm song.
But also, I think that music works surprisingly well in the movie.
Yeah. It
just feels that right, and they don't let the music overwhelm things. So if a scene needs to stop the music and have it be silent, they stop the music. They let the music stop and then have the scene go on. They never let it overwhelm things. Mm-hmm. And that's impressive, because with a soundtrack this beloved and a game this beloved, you might want to have every scene in Iwatodai Dorm have Lotus Juice. But they don't do that. Mm-hmm. It happens once in the movie, and it's the perfect scene for it. Mm-hmm. It feels like they made just a lot of really thoughtful decisions where they honestly kind of restrained themselves from where they could have gone with things.
Yeah.
This could have been so much more fan servicey than it is. Mm-hmm. But the fan service that's there is awesome.
Yeah, it's very well executed. They don't sacrifice any of like the quality of the movie to try to stuff in a moment.
Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect way to describe it. So what else is there to talk about here?
I don't know.
There was a line in this movie that you said was one of the best lines ever. I want to talk about that.
Oh, right, yeah, because there's the part. So there's the part where they're investigating what happened to Fuka, and they go to the alleyway. This is a scene that is also in the game. That's where Shinji is like, because Shinji is brought up, like, is seen earlier, but like this is where he kind of actually has any interaction with the cast, and they're there asking questions, and it's kind of like this like gang of punks. And one of them like gets up in Makoto's face, is like, "Come on, say something!" And he's got like this nose piercing that goes and like attaches to his ear piercing with like a chain. And then Makoto looks at him and says, "That's impressive. You chained your nose to your face so you wouldn't lose it."
It's so great.
It's a brilliant diss. Like I've never. It's really creative and it's really funny.
And how perfect is it for Makoto at that moment?
Yeah, and it's like, and I love the way the guy who does the voice delivers it, because it's like, it's still in this really sort of monotone, apathetic voice, but it's like, it's clear that like there's a little bit there is like Makoto just kind of, wants to poke the guy a little bit.
He's enjoying it.
Yeah. Because because since he's so doesn't give a shit, he's not afraid to get in a fight with anyone.
Right.
I was kind of hoping that Makoto would just beat the fuck out of that guy, because, like, at that point he had been training in like Tartaros for like a month and a half, so the dude has like real hand-to-hand combat experience, like life or death fights he's been in. He could probably beat the fuck out of that dude.
Better to let Shinji come in and do it. Shinji has a great moment, and I think Shinji's another character where obviously he will not become important until the next movie, but they still managed to put his scenes in here and not have him overwhelm things.
Yeah, they set him up and like they allowed to set him up and develop him a little bit for his appearance in the next movie, but his appearance here is still useful because he does deliver like an important piece of exposition and allow that scene for character development. So it's like, it's one of the great things about the movies is like they know how to make use of everything within the context of the movie and like pull everything you need to out of every single scene you're adapting from the game and use that to inform your film, while also being able to set up the future stuff. Like, all that stuff's so well done.
Absolutely, and one of the nice choices they make is that when you get into the heavy stuff in the, for lack of a better term, the third act of the film, Fuka, once you're into that, they drop everything else. They're not worrying about any cameos or social links or Shinji or anything else, and you're just in the Fuka story, which is, as it's been changed here, the payoff to everything in the movie so far. Mm-hmm. So it really does feel like a contained unit where you get to the end of the movie and a lot of stuff is still up in the air, obviously, but in part because none of the big mysteries have come in yet to the game, to the story, you feel like the movie ends and it's like, I got a good 90-minute contained experience and I'm interested in what comes next, but I'm not mad that I'm not seeing it now, which is so often the problem. That's what I felt about Desolation of Smaug, is that it went for 2 hours and then cut off.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, you were building to a scene that we're not going to see for a year. Yeah, fuck you guys. But no, this doesn't feel like that at all, although you do get a nice hint of Igus at the end of the movie. So that was good. But yeah, it's such a fun movie.
Yeah, it's way better done than I thought it would be. Like, I'm so impressed. Even though, like, I like Persona 4 the animation, I think it's well done, but it's not, like, amazing. Like, I think this is a better adaptation of Persona 3, at least a section of Persona 3, than Persona 4 the animation was of Persona 4.
Yeah, I obviously I can't agree with that because I haven't seen Persona 4 the animation, but I think it's so impressive, and I really can't overstate how aesthetically amazing this is. This is just one of the most evocative looking and interesting looking animated movies I've ever seen, and it can't be, a huge budget movie or anything, but they just, every shot is so gorgeously done and so haunting and interesting and beautiful, and having it on Blu-ray is great. It really lets you see all of that.
Yeah.
So I'm really impressed, and I can't wait to see how they do some of the stuff in the future. I mean, I was just looking at screenshots from the next film and seeing how they're choosing to visually depict some moments from the game that I hold in really high regard. That's really interesting to me.
Yeah, like that's like the best thing coming out of this movie is it just makes you really excited to see how they're going to handle the other stuff, because it's like you see they did it so well with what is the least interesting part of the whole game. Like, if they did such a good job with that, like when they get like the really, really great material that the game has.
Yeah.
Like, how spectacular is that going to be?
So, here's my question
Sure.
about the future. I'm assuming there's going to be 4 movies because we have 4 seasons in the game, and that would make sense just because you could go through there's so much plot in this next section of the game.
Yeah.
It feels like you couldn't go any further than Shinji's death.
Yeah.
And then the next one, I think you would probably want to go up to the big crucifixion scene where you learn Ikutsuki is a bad guy and you learn about the fall and all that stuff. Yeah. And it feels like maybe you could do that and all the winter stuff in one movie. It would have to be a little longer, I feel like.
Yeah, it would be a long movie.
But it feels like 4 would be the sweet spot for this, in part because I can see in my head, especially now having seen this movie, what the arcs for each of those would be.
Yeah, I agree.
So the next movie will obviously be a lot about Igus.
Yeah, because she'll be introduced there.
Yeah.
They'll have all the stuff on that island. It was one of my favorite parts of the whole game, Operation Babe Hunt.
You'll have Strega getting introduced.
Yeah, you have that really good scene between Yukari and the protagonist.
Yeah.
Where they fight for a little bit and then run out.
Yeah, which is actually, I wanted to show you, I think they have that shot in here. I love how they're visually depicting that. They have this little shot of it where you can see that there, it's in front of this blood ocean.
Oh, nice, yeah.
That looks so cool. Yeah.
Yeah, Koromaru.
Yeah.
He's going to be in the next one too. So
yep.
He has a little bit of a cameo, but
yeah.
not much.
Well, that's what I want to say. I forgot to mention before. This movie's opening, the theme, it does the full "Burn My Dread" theme song, and what it does is it just flips around to every character, and you see what they're doing before the opening of the game, of the story. That's a really nice thing for fans, I think.
Yeah, especially because it reminds you that Ken is in there, because he's always kind of a character I forget about a little bit, because I feel like
I think he's the weakest character.
Yeah, he just by the time you get to the end of the game, his story, Ken's character arc just is so small in the context of the rest of the game that's it just gets spent and he just feels useless.
Yeah. I don't like Ken.
Yeah.
Ken's arc is basically the arc of Hope from Final Fantasy 13.
Sure, yeah.
And that, I don't have any interest in that. But anyway, yes, it's a good preview of things to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. Though the next movie will also... I mean, this is the thing. I'm playing through what will be movie 2 right now in the game. And I think where Persona 3 really kicks into high gear for me is you have this simmering set of emotions for the first, 15 hours of the game. Which is, Yukari is really jealous of Mitsuru, and Junpei is really jealous of the protagonist, and everyone kind of has these tensions, and they all boil over in this one scene. And then the next day, I think it's June 7th or something, June 12th actually, where all the characters, you just go character to character on the day after that and see what their reactions are.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, where Persona 3 becomes Persona 3, because the emotional tapestry widens so much. And I think that's where these movies are really going to be able to play, is because that's an arc movie 2 can be about. And that's, and when you get into, movies 3 and 4 and the stuff at the end where it's just the pressure that comes on these characters and the amount of that death weighs on all of them. That I think just seeing what they did with just something as simple as the bullying arc in this movie, they're going to be able to do that really impressively. And I think that's where it leads to my last question here is just, we kind of joked about this earlier. I wonder if you could show this movie to someone who has no experience with it, and I think they would get something out of it. They would get
something out of it. Like they would be confused, and they wouldn't I mean, this is true of anything. They wouldn't get as much out of it as a fan would. But it's like, but the movie is well constructed enough that it explains enough of what it needs to, and the dialogue is great. The performances are great. It's great.
Yeah. And obviously, you're not going to spend $80 on this set if you haven't played the game. That's no one is going to be doing that. But
I don't know how the only way some non-fan would see the movie is if someone else shows it to them. I don't know how you would stumble into accidentally purchasing some $80 collector's edition import DVD from Japan, on accident.
But it's not as insular as I thought it could be.
Yeah,
it definitely feels like its own movie, and I think when we have the whole 4-film cycle and we can put it together, I wonder if you could sit someone down and have them watch that, and if they would get an emotional impact out of that.
Yeah.
I think it's totally possible, and I would not have guessed that coming into this, and that's one of the most impressive things about it to me.
Yeah.
You would still have to sit them down before the movie and say, look, the Velvet Room, it's where you fuse personas.
Yeah. But it's but maybe in the next movies they do something with that to make it make a little bit more sense. It's definitely this movie, it's very strange, but I hope they have a plan for it, and it's not just there because it's there in the game.
Yeah. And they're pumping these movies out pretty fast. The next movie is about to come out. It comes out on June 7th. I assume they'll have another one ready by this fall.
Probably, yeah.
So we'll have these all out pretty quick. We'll probably see number 2 by the end of the year, which is good. But I'm very excited for the next couple movies because of this one.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about this?
It's an awesome movie. If Persona 3 fans listening to this, I think it's a worthy purchase. It's definitely, they did a really good job. So.
And you get a soundtrack of new Shoji Meguro music.
Exactly.
What are you waiting for? Come on.
I mean, it is $80.
Okay, well, yeah. And by the time we get all 3 or 4 movies, that'll be a lot of money. Oh well.
Good God, yeah.
Which is funny because I only have ever paid $10 for Persona 3 the game because that's what it is on PSN.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. And then maybe how they're doing the Persona 4 Golden version?
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to go back and do Persona 3 Portable, the movie series, where it's the girl protagonist.
That would be... They could totally fucking do that if they wanted to, but...
Just reanimate every scene pink. That's not me being sexist, that's the game being kind of gendered.
Sure.
All right. And anyway, so next podcast episode, next week we're going to have our X-Men Days of Future Past discussion, and talk a little bit about the X-Men film series as a whole with that too, because I want to go into some of the past stuff with that, because that will definitely... I haven't seen the new movie yet, but... It'll color whatever reactions we have to it because it is combining the past and present. So that'll be interesting. And then as soon as, I think Watch Dogs is something where we're going to have to talk about it as we go along.
Yeah, it's going to be a long game.
So we'll probably do an episode where we do some spoiler-free discussion of what we like about the game so far. And then when we're both done with it, we'll do a full episode on that.
Maybe it'll be like with the Grand Theft Auto 5 where we just did 3 podcasts where it's just touched on it. It's my slow turning is I really like it. It's it's a pretty good game, and you're I love it, and it is the worst game ever.
I never said it was the worst game ever.
Okay, that's a little bit of an exaggeration. You did say you loved it, though. You said
I loved it, and I
fell in love with the game when you were climbing on the mountain or whatever.
I did say that, and I can now say I am not a fan of Grand Theft Auto 5. I do not like that game. I don't think it's a bad game.
You fell in love with it and it broke your heart.
It did. It's yeah.
Anyway, so that's Watch Dogs.
And there's plenty of stuff in June and July, too. So,
yes.
And hopefully we can talk about Godzilla more at some point.
Yeah, you need to watch a lot of Godzilla movies.
In a short amount of time.
Yes.
All right. Well, in any case, this has been our Persona 3 review. See you guys later. That was a terrible ending. Sean, why don't you give us a better ending? And I'll edit that.
Bye.
That was terrible also.
I think it was better than yours. I think it had better timing than yours. Can you think of a better ending?